You know, I've been around for a while. Met some interesting people. Done some crazy things. So you just might think that there's not much that can take me by surprise. You'd be wrong. The world is full of stories, science, and things that amaze and confound me. Every single day, incredible mysteries that keep me awake at night. Some I can answer. Others just defy logic. Do monsters exist? In West Virginia, a town is terrorized by a 7-foot winged demon. Did it cause the death of 46 people?
It had 2 huge black wings and no head, no arms.
In Newfoundland, a macabre creature washes up on a local beach. Are our oceans concealing a megabeast?
It was nothing that either of us had ever seen or could imagine.
And in New Delhi, thousands are attacked by a metal-clawed monster. Was it a man or a beast?
People ran off in absolute panic. They just were fleeing from the scene.
Yeah, it's a weird world, and I love it. You know, I just had a lovely holiday in Scotland. Edinburgh Castle, bagpipes, the whole deal. Even went to Loch Ness, where Nessie, famous Loch Ness monster, is supposed to live. We got on this boat, went out on the loch, searching for hours. Then guess what I saw? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Total waste of time. And $6. Are monsters nothing more than bait to lure gullible tourists? Do things like Yeti, Bigfoot, and Chupacabra exist? I got news for you. They just might. Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Nearly 50 years ago, this sleepy farming town was brutally awoken by a series of monstrous events that are still a mystery today. Lorne Coleman is an author. He documented the incidents, which began on the night of November 15th, 1966, when 2 young couples took a drive.
Roger and Linda Scarborough and the Mallets were driving around in the old TNT area. It was called TNT because that's where dynamite was stored during World War II.
Secluded and dark, TNT was also a well-known lover's lane. But instead of fun, the 4 teenagers are about to encounter a living nightmare.
All of a sudden they see this creature that's 6 feet tall, and it's coming to them. It's having glowing red eyes in its chest, which are reflecting the headlights. It had 2 huge black wings, no head, no arms. All of a sudden, it goes into the air and starts flying. They started racing back to Point Pleasant, and the creature was in back of the car. Really, they felt it almost was touching both sides of the highway. Red glowing eyes, no arms, just these huge wings.
Reaching speeds of 100 miles an hour, the chase continues until finally the creature disappears. Was there something unpleasant in Point Pleasant?
The next day they come back out there and they see it flying overhead. So all of a sudden you get more and more kind of word of mouth in the town that this creature's been around, people are seeing it. The newspapers hadn't even caught on to the reports yet. So the next day you have Marcella Bennett saying she's going over to one of her relatives' houses, which it's a bunch of houses right along the road that leads to the TNT. She gets close to the house and all of a sudden on the roof of the house sees the Mothman. She's carrying her baby in her arms and falls on the baby. out of terror and fright, gets up, races off, and they tell the police too. What occurs, however, is that it's then that it gets into the newspaper, and all of a sudden you had, within a few weeks, 200 people saying that they'd seen the Mothman.
This remarkable story sends shockwaves through the town. The media calls the creature the Mothman. Local resident Fay Laporte was 14 years old at the time. 3 days after the first sighting, she decided to visit the scene for herself.
That's the road over there that we drove down, me and my brother, to come out here to try to find the so-called Mothman we heard about. My brother said, well, I'm just going to see if I can find it and prove that it's just somebody in a Halloween costume or something on wires or something. As we got to the area, my brother kept looking past me to the window. I said, well, what is it? What are you looking at? He said, well, don't look right now. He said, but there's something beside the car there by the window. So he slammed the brakes on and just like it was nothing, just leaped right up on the car. Even though it was dark, you could still see the eyes. The eyes held me. The most red, I can't explain the red. It just was such a red that I just can't describe. It's just like a color that it looks like they're really lit up, but it's not a glow, but it's perfectly lit up that you cannot miss it. And it's like, that's all you see when you look at it. It had the features of a bird combined with a human. We were really scared, and I was begging and crying for my brother to go ahead and let's get out here. That's when I finally saw it open up its wings and just flew off in the sky so pretty, and it was gone.
For the next year, the Mothman terrorizes the people of Point Pleasant.
We were coming up the road here, and we looked around the curve there, and we thought it was a car light. So we stopped the car, and the thing came over top of the car. Well, I just think it's something supernatural that we can't explain or something like that. I know I can't explain it, that's for sure.
They wonder where it will all end. 13 months after the first sighting, they get their answer.
The Silver Bridge between West Virginia and Ohio, starting at Point Pleasant, collapsed on December 15th, 1967. 67 people fell into the water of the Ohio River. 46 died, and 2 bodies never were even found.
There's seemingly no apparent reason for this horrific tragedy. Then comes a terrifying report. The night before the disaster, the Mothman was seen hanging from the Silver Bridge.
And people were scared. They were so scared they didn't want to talk about the bridge, they didn't want to talk about Mothman, they didn't want to talk about anything. This town became quiet. And everybody for a long time said that nobody talked. And you still have people that won't talk about the bridge collapse today.
The Mothman was never seen again. For 45 years, this incredible story has baffled experts. But some believe recent evidence could finally explain the mystery of the Mothman. Joe Nickell is a paranormal investigator with Skeptical Inquirer Science magazine.
We human beings misperceive all the time. People say, I know what I saw. Actually, they know what they think they saw.
Joe believes the Mothman wasn't quite the monstrous beast it was made out to be.
I believe the barred owl is the creature that most clearly fits the bill.
Was the Mothman simply an owl? Nickell thinks the answer lies in Linda Scarberry's first descriptions back in 1966.
Her original description of Mothman is of a very large, winged creature. She said it had no neck, virtually no real head, just eyes, very large eyes, round and shining like a bicycle reflector. In the owl family, there are different degrees of what's called eye shine. Among the most potent is that of the barred owl, which has a deep crimson eye shine. It's a large owl with big wingspan. It would look like just eyes set at the top of a body with wings up. It flies in a silent moth-like flight. It has pretty much exactly the characteristics of Mothman, the original sightings.
But does Nichols' theory explain the height? Eyewitnesses reported a creature that was 6 or 7 feet tall.
We know that people misperceive, and I'm quite confident that somebody looking and not knowing what it is at night quickly and maybe being frightened by it, I dare say I would misjudge the distance and therefore misjudge the height. Keep in mind that the barred owl does not fly around with a yardstick in its claw for measurement purposes. So if you're looking at it and you don't know what it is, because it's a funny looking creature, so I think that people misperceived the distance and therefore misjudged the height. And they were excited and they kind of focused in on it, and that also made it loom large in their consciousness. Barred owls were at the site. This was the McClintock Wildlife Preserve, overlaps with the TNT area, and there were barred owls in that area. So I would say this in summary: if it looked like a barred owl and acted like a barred owl and had red reflector eyes, maybe it was a barred owl.
It's incredible, isn't it? Here we have an entire town in fear of their lives from something that can't explain, a creature 7 feet tall that can fly 100 miles an hour and maybe even bring down a bridge, and they blame it on this guy? Don't get me wrong, he's scary if you're a field mouse. Perhaps the real question here is, why did so many people think they saw a monster and even blame it for the death of 46 people? Weird or what? A psychologist believes there's one sure way to solve the mystery of the Mothman: using fear.
We're going to try to induce a mild case of mass psychogenic illness.
A mysterious winged creature called the Mothman terrorizes a town in West Virginia. Is it proof that monsters exist? Jim Hurat is a psychologist. He believes the Mothman can be explained by a phenomena called MPI.
Mass psychogenic illness, or MPI, is a psychological term for an outbreak of mysterious illness that has no medical cause, but it's entirely in someone's head. Before you know it, you have a contagion effect, whereby those social symptoms start spreading in a large group of people. Mass psychogenic illness tends to be associated with negatives because people oftentimes report and care about and give a lot of credence to dramatic things in the environment. And oftentimes, just from our evolutionary standpoint, those are dangerous things, negative things. So when it comes to illness, that's something we want to avoid. So if we see someone get sick, that grabs our attention. Just like when we see something that might be paranormal, that grabs our attention too.
Was Mothman the result of social contagion? Huron believes he can prove his theory by showing what might have happened in Point Pleasant.
We're going to try to induce a mild case of mass psychogenic illness. I've selected a group of volunteers. I'm going to give them the suggestion that they're going to be visiting a very haunted place in the woods. We're going to take them out there and let their imaginations take over. What we should see, if mass psychogenic illness is a plausible explanation for the Mothman sightings, is that we'll see a few people start having experiences, other people will notice that, and then we'll see an outbreak of similar symptoms, if that's what you want to call them, just due to social pressure. Was this fact? Was this fiction?
Huron begins by telling the group he needs their help to solve a series of disturbing paranormal incidents reported in the area. As night falls, the group sets out into the woods.
Everyone stop, please. Everyone fan out.
They are told to turn off their flashlights.
And stop.
From this point,
Take a moment,
they can only be
please
turned
close your
on
eyes.
when someone thinks they experience
Close your
something
eyes.
paranormal.
Just get your sense of bearings.
In just minutes, flashlights come on, and reports of paranormal activity flood in. Horn believes the flashlights act as social cues, which influence the other members of the group.
Felt a cold breeze before the wind started blowing.
You felt a cold breeze? Someone felt cold over there too.
I feel like someone is following me and someone is just waiting to say something. Like static electricity on my face.
Let me understand this. Like right here, you feel like there's static electricity on your face?
Mm-hmm.
Is it as soon as one or two cues took hold, then you start seeing a flurry of other flashlights going on. It percolated throughout the entire group. Exactly what we would expect with psychogenic illness in a group. Tonight's experiments were very impressive because it kind of confirmed what I think happened with the Mothman. That is, we had the right type of people in the right type of environment, an environment that was spooky, full of context, exactly the same kind of environment that the Mothman experiences happen, and a little bit of suggestion caused a flurry, an outbreak of experiences that otherwise wouldn't have happened. It's exactly what I thought happened with Mothman.
Was the Mothman all in the minds of its victims? And does this explain what eyewitnesses like Faye Laporte saw? Ken Gerhardt is a professional monster hunter. He believes the best way to solve the Mothman mystery is to hunt it down himself.
For the past decades, I have gone out and searched for hard physical evidence that we share our world with creatures, legendary beasts, things that have not been classified or verified by scientists. Mothman is a monster in the truest sense of the word. I mean, here you have a creature that doesn't match the description of anything we know about in the natural world. Something that seemingly stepped right out of a science fiction movie. Mothman's main motivation seems to be to chase and terrify people, and possibly leave a path of destruction and devastation in its wake. There are many people who blame Mothman for the collapse of the Silver Bridge and believe that there's actually a death curse associated with the Mothman. So I would say yes, Mothman is the ultimate monster.
Gerhardt has come to the McClintock Wildlife Reserve, close to where the Mothman was first sighted.
It's very exciting to be here in the actual location where Mothman was reported so many times back in the 1960s. If Mothman is a real physical animal, it's going to make an impact on its environment. And this could be tracks on the ground, nests, markings, and the like.
Using a camera trap, Gerhardt is hoping to catch Mothman unaware.
This is actually a motion-activated camera with an infrared beam, and anything that passes within that beam is actually going to be captured on this particular camera. I can put the camera out overnight and come back the following morning to determine whether, in fact, I've captured an image of the subject.
To attract his prey, Gerhardt sets up a blasting device, a machine that broadcasts the sound of forest creatures in pain.
Many of the eyewitnesses said the Mothman made kind of a squeaking mechanical mouse sound. And fortunately, I have a little sound on here called lip squeak. And I think that's exactly what we need. Did you hear that? Something moving around there in the brush. I don't know what it was, but basically that last sound definitely evoked some type of response or reaction.
With his equipment set, it is now a waiting game. Will the Mothman reveal himself? I don't know about you, but if I were a monster hunter, indeed, if I were hunting the Mothman, I think I'd be taking something a little more substantial than this. I mean, at least I would think you take something like this. Wouldn't you? But we have to ask the question, if monsters really exist, why has no one, monster hunter or not, been able to catch one? Then again, if monsters were just ordinary critters, they wouldn't really be monsters, would they? Returning the next day, monster hunter Ken Gearhart checks to see if he's found evidence of the Mothman.
Huh. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't look like we got anything on film. I may have been a little bit wrong about the placement of this camera. Lesson learned here is that monster hunting is a very arduous and time-consuming process, and it may take quite a bit of time before we actually get an image of our quarry.
The high-tech approach has failed to find anything, but Gearhart thinks he knows exactly what Mothman is.
I believe Mothman to be the product of negative energy. Consider for a moment the main location where Mothman was encountered. Many of the Native American tribes would avoid this area completely because they believed it to be haunted by monsters and evil spirits. And then you have the great curse of Chief Cornstalk, the Shawnee chief who, on his deathbed, cursed the area because the white men had betrayed him. So in that respect, I believe Mothman to be the accumulation of all of this negative energy, perhaps brought to life by some type of mechanism far beyond the realm of human comprehension. Beyond that, there have been reports of winged humanoid creatures all over the world for centuries. And in many ancient cultures, for example in Japan where you have the Tengu, which is a birdman, the Tengu is often considered to be a bad omen or a harbinger of doom. You have the Banshee from Scottish lore. And so in many of these mythologies and folklores, these winged creatures are often considered to be premonitions of doom and destruction. So I think that's a very interesting tie-in between Mothman and the timing of the bridge collapse.
Was Mothman a bad omen that somehow materialized in Point Pleasant? Or could it simply have been mass hysteria created by an owl? Weird, or what? A fisherman finds a giant, unidentifiable creature on a beach in Newfoundland.
It was nothing that either of us had ever seen or could imagine.
Are monsters lurking in the deep?
Ah, hey, whoa. You know, I used to love fishing. Nothing better than the thrill of landing a big one, the ultimate challenge between man and beast. Well, every now and then you catch something you're not expecting. Strange things that make you wonder, what is living in the depths of our oceans? I don't know. In 2001, Gary Stenson was working as a fisheries officer in Newfoundland, Canada, when he received the strangest phone call of his career.
Got a call from a fisherman. He was telling me about a creature on the beach that had washed up. He started to describe it to me, and it sounded unlike anything that I had encountered.
Mystified, Gary decides to meet the fisherman and investigate the strange sighting.
It was a very isolated area, and as we came up to it, we saw this large creature laying on the beach itself. I've never seen anything that looked like this. The whole thing was tapering to the tail end, and once it got to the tail end, it just broke off. We had thought that it might be something like a giant squid, which we do have here, but there are no tentacles that looked like that. It didn't also look like a whale or a shark, which it could be. There was nothing that looked like a head. There was nothing that looked like any sort of structures that we could identify it.
In over 20 years as a fisheries officer, Gary thought he had seen it all. Until now.
I've worked on a lot of whales, and I've worked on a lot of seals, and even some sharks that have come ashore, but this creature was nothing like that, and there was nothing that we could tell where it came from. From a distance, it had what looked like hair standing up all over it. It was about 5.5 meters long, about 2 meters wide, and about 1 meter high in the middle of it. There were a number of lobes. They looked almost like short arms with notches in between. It smelled a lot like rotting tissue. It was pretty heavy. We tried pushing on it, it was solid. It was nothing that we could move. So what we did was we took our knives and we tried to cut up and cut into the tissue.
As they cut into the carcass, they made a bizarre discovery.
The exterior of it was very hard. It was quite tough, but there was no sign of any organs. If it was a shark, there'd be cartilage, but there was no cartilage. So we looked for bone. If it was a whale, there'd be some bone in it, but none of this either. We spent a lot of time trying to decide what we thought it might be. And of course, as a scientist, you're very curious. And in fact, that's a sign of a good scientist to me, is somebody who's curious about what they see. And of course, we were very curious as to what this might be. So we decided that the best thing to do would be to take some tissue with it, and we brought that back with us.
It seemed Gary and the fisherman had discovered a creature unknown to science.
It was nothing that either of us had ever seen or could imagine. It's not impossible that there's something out there that we haven't seen before that's lurking in the depths.
A giant creature washes up in Newfoundland. Was it an unknown species or a monster from the deep? And if there was one, could there be others? Remarkably, the answer is yes. It's incredible. In the last century, giant weird blobs of, I don't know what, have been washing up all over the planet. Are they something awful from the bowels of ships? I hope not. In fact, they're so hard to identify that the only name scientists could come up with is globsters. Part glob, part monster. Globster. Clever. But what the hell are they? Matthew Adele is a professor of anatomy. He believes the explanation is simple.
It sounds like something very mysterious, something completely unknown to science. There are dozens of reports of globsters from around the world going back over a century. They're usually formless and they don't contain any bones. There's no evidence of a head or a tail or any limbs. They're just big, shapeless globs of flesh. But there's no evidence so far that they're anything other than dead whales.
But if globsters are whales, how could tons of bones and internal organs be missing? Waddell thinks the answer lies in one of the strongest elements in nature, collagen, a protein found in whale skin.
Collagen is similar to steel in terms of tensile strength, so it's one of the toughest substances known to man. If you feel the back of your heel, feel your Achilles tendon, that's a big rope of collagen the size of your finger. Now imagine something like that woven in overlapping belts around an animal 100 feet long, and you get some idea of the strength of whale skin. It's just incredible.
Scientists think protective collagen allows whales to dive up to 2 miles below the surface of the ocean.
Many submarines would crush before they got down to that depth. Collagen is their pressure suit when they dive and their armor against things like sharks that would try to take bites out of them.
Waddell also believes collagen causes whales to decompose in a unique way.
Decomposition for whales is an interesting process because whales are different from other animals in 2 ways mainly. The first is that they're so big, just their sheer scale influences how they decompose. The other thing is the skin of whales is unique in the animal kingdom. It's incredibly thick, it's incredibly strong. You can hang up the entire weight of a whale by a hook through its skin. When a whale dies, the skin doesn't fall apart the way that normal animal skin does.
After death, scavengers rapidly devour the insides of a dead whale. But they leave the gristly collagen alone.
And once animals have eaten their way into the body to get the good stuff, it's easy for the bones to slide right out and sink to the bottom of the ocean. The skin falls off like a sock off of a foot. And now you have a 100-foot long tube of skin floating through the ocean.
But many globsters have tentacles, strange arms, even hair. Can Waddell's theory explain these bizarre features?
Imagine the gnarliest piece of gristle you've ever encountered that's 100 feet long and a foot thick. It lasts essentially forever. It's only broken up really by getting pounded on rocks and torn apart by waves. That sack of skin can float around in the ocean for months or maybe even years. It can rip, it can tear, it can shred into all kinds of interesting shapes. And the collagen actually frays, just like an old pair of pants. And those threads of collagen that stick out are usually pink or red, and they look like hair.
Are globsters simply giant blobs of collagen floating around in a suit of whale skin? Or are they beasts from the deep?
I love a good mystery as much as the next person, and I would love to think that there are giant unknown animals in the ocean, and there probably are some new kinds of sharks and maybe even new species of whales, but there's no real sea monster. As much as I would like to believe that there is, I have to go where the evidence leads, and so far all of the evidence that we have suggests that globsters are just the rotting skin of dead whales.
Are globsters simply masses of mammal meat? Some believe they are proof of something far more terrifying.
It would absolutely be a monster.
Strange creatures called globsters are washing up on beaches all over the world. Are they simply dead whales? Dr. Hans Larsson is a paleontologist. He thinks globsters could be a living relic from our ancient past.
The researchers who point to globsters and say they're nothing more than whales, they're probably right for most cases. But pretty much the entire ocean below 100 meters depth hasn't been explored.
Some areas of the ocean are over 6 miles deep. Larsson believes that a terrifying creature could be lurking in the depths. The megalodon.
Megalodon is a huge fish. It looks a lot like a great white shark, but it's much bigger.
It is known as the Tyrannosaurus rex of the deep, a monster that terrorized the ocean for 25 million years, and the right size for a globster.
This is a tiger shark, about 15 or so feet long, and look at the size of the teeth and the size of the mouth. So it's pretty impressive. I mean, this would be scary enough in the water should you be in front of it. But compare that to a megalodon, and this is an average size tooth. It would absolutely be a monster.
Most scientists believe this marine monster became extinct 1.5 million years ago. But remarkably, Larsson isn't so sure.
Some people have suggested that the cooling of the oceans may have driven megalodon to extinction. I think we should be a little bit skeptical about that because all the other animals in the ocean survive quite well. And if that whole ecosystem could survive the global cooling of the oceans and the ice ages, why not megalodon?
Could science be wrong? Another giant of the deep, the coelacanth, was supposed to have died out 65 million years ago with the dinosaurs. But then in 1938, a fisherman hauled one up. Are megalodons alive? Could globsters be washed up remains of a 25 million year old living fossil?
We have glimpses of some other fishes down there, other sharks and other non-shark fishes, but we know practically nothing about them. I think that world is just unexplored. If the megalodon was one animal down there that we didn't know about, there could be a huge range of other animals as well, non-air breathing animals. Things like other squids, other fishes, both sharks and non-shark fishes, other invertebrates. Who knows what other kinds of crab-like animals or arthropods or jellyfish animals are down there. We just have no clue.
Do giant killers lurk in our oceans? Are they monsters of the deep? Or just globs of super strength blubber? Weird or what? In India, a rampaging man-beast causes widespread panic in the nation's capital.
They scream and cry and run off. You know, it was absolute panic.
Are scientists creating man-made monsters?
You know, when it comes to trying to prove there's no such thing as monsters, there's one big problem. There's just no hard evidence. They never seem to hang around long enough. But what if we're looking in the wrong places? What if instead of creepy shadows or deep dark corners of our imagination, the monsters we're looking for are right under our noses? What if we're the ones creating them?
Sanal Damaruku is a journalist. He was in Delhi in the summer of 2001 and witnessed one of the most bizarre events in its long history.
It became very, very warm. The temperatures went up to 48 degrees Celsius with enormous humidity, which made life unbearable. Nobody could sleep in home, especially the poor section of the town. A lot of people have been sleeping on the rooftop.
As thousands of people try to escape the heat, they have no idea a 6-week reign of terror is about to begin.
2 factory workers said that they have been sleeping on the factory balcony in the evening, and suddenly some strange creature jumped from the floor to the 2nd floor and scratched them, attacked them, screamed and went off.
In a city home to thousands of monkeys, at first the attack seemed unremarkable, until the victims described what they had seen.
And they said that it had 2-3 special things: metallic claws, then a special light coming from its forehead, one green and the other red. And these lights were moving, and it scratched, made a special whistling sound and disappeared. The story was like a wildfire. It spread everywhere. People have been speaking about this special creature.
What had attacked the workers? Within 24 hours, the newspapers give the creature a name: the Monkey Man. The very next night, it strikes again. By the end of the week, there are reports of a dozen more attacks.
People were so afraid. People ran off in absolute panic. They just were fleeing from the scene. They scream and cry, and hearing this sound, people shut off the windows, close lights. You know, it was absolute panic.
All the victims described the same thing: a hairy creature with metallic claws and strange lights.
Everybody has been speaking about this special kind of movement that it has, as if it's controlled by somebody. Some people said that it could be a half-man, half-robot, and especially created by the neighboring country Pakistan to make trouble in India.
But then comes a new twist. As rumors grow, so does the panic. Just 2 weeks after the first sighting of the Monkey Man, the entire city of New Delhi is besieged by terror.
So many people have been injured. Initially, every night, we had 5 to 6 people got attacked by the Monkey Man with scratches, bruises, and other body damages. And the number increased. Later, per night, there have been 120, 130 people got attacked by the Monkey Man. And there have been more than 800 people hospitalized at different parts of the time.
Then, tragedy strikes.
One lady was on a rooftop sleeping, and someone saw the Monkey Man, screamed, and the whole people started running off. She has been running off, and she fallen down from the 2nd floor, straight down, hitting the floor, and she died.
In the following days, more people die as crowds rush to escape. As panic grows, New Delhi becomes a ghost town.
People were so afraid to come out. The Delhi streets were completely empty after 8 o'clock. Totally empty. Not even a car would go out. The whole city was completely afraid of Monkey Man.
Then, just as the terror reaches its peak, the incredible happens.
There was no monkey man reported anywhere after 3rd or 4th week of May, and it simply disappeared.
What happened in New Delhi? Something held this giant city in its fearful grip for weeks. Was it a monster? Could the monkey man be real? Jay Lakhani is a teacher of the Hindu religion. He believes the monkey man can be explained by Indian culture.
There is nothing here that would make me feel that there's anything more than superstition, kind of rolled up with fear and rolled up with this idea of religious iconography, which has kind of produced this story.
Lakhani thinks that powerful religious beliefs could have helped create the monkey man.
In the Hindu tradition, the word avatar is very central. Avatar means one who descends. The Hindus say the spirit has a habit of descending to earth in human form.
In the Hindu religion, gods known as avatars are believed to descend to earth in times of need. Many are depicted as part human, part animal. Was the monkey man a well-meaning avatar that was mistaken for something evil?
India is a poor country struggling with lots of issues, so it's understandable the public would like to project the idea that an avatar is here to rescue them. Any sober Hindu, when he looks at the story in a very sober manner, will immediately come to the conclusion that this was not an avatar. It's not just my take on it, but every sober Hindu, no sober Hindu would really consider this to be an avatar, because there is nothing that the monkey has done which in a way reflects what an avatar is all about, which is to benefit humanity, not frighten it. You see, a lay person is very, very gullible. I suspect it is quite possible that a few pranksters got together, dressed up a couple of monkeys, and set them loose on the streets of New Delhi. But for a lay person who is kind of steeped in religious tradition, it is understandable that suddenly when he sees a few pranksters, he somehow projects his own idea that this is an avatar on the streets of New Delhi.
Were thousands of New Delhi residents victims of pranks blown out of proportion by widely held religious beliefs? Did the monkey man exist at all?
I don't think the monkey man existed at all. I think all these things combined with a few real monkeys kind of jumping about and perhaps some pranksters getting onto the act is the reason why we have got this story developing in India as an avatar coming down to earth.
So is that the end of this mystery? Maybe not. Could Monkey Man be a product of the human imagination in a different way? Not a religiously inspired delusion, but a manifestation of the dark side of science. Recently declassified documents hint at some kind of twisted Soviet genetic experiment. Was the Monkey Man a secret weapon that escaped the evil lab of a mad scientist that spawned him? Is that weird? Or what? In New Delhi, thousands of people claim to have been attacked by a metal-clawed monster known as the Monkey Man. Was it simply mass hysteria? Or religious superstition? Scott Marlowe is a cryptozoologist with a remarkable theory.
I believe monsters exist. They may not necessarily be the Saturday or Friday night movie version of the monsters that terrify us on the silver screen, but there are things out there that go bump in the night that are terrifying, to say the least. When I first heard the story of India's Monkey Man, I was pretty certain I knew exactly what it was.
Marlowe's theory is controversial and alarming. He thinks the Monkey Man is a real-life monster created by us.
Monsters exist, and we certainly have the ability now with genetic engineering to create them. Based on some of the descriptions, there's a distinct possibility that monkey men could be some kind of human-ape hybrid.
Could someone have created a creature half man, half ape? And if so, why? Incredibly, this concept isn't as weird as it sounds. It could even be based in fact. Declassified Russian military files have allegedly revealed that in the 1920s, Joseph Stalin secretly tried to create a super soldier.
The super soldier is a genetically engineered creature that is designed with a military purpose in mind. Stalin commissioned a scientist to attempt a hybridization who went to Africa, collected ape DNA, and then attempted to impregnate human women with the sperm of these chimps that he collected the material from. They were trying to create a soldier that had superhuman strength. They wanted the strength of an ape, which is known to be about 7 times that of a human, with the intelligence of a human.
Incredibly, Marlowe believes Stalin wasn't the only one who was messing with nature.
Not to be outdone by the Russians, we attempted to do the same thing. The attempt was not successful by all accounts, but a lot of that had to do with the lack of knowledge on the genetics. Today, it could probably be done.
Are scientists using modern technology to create super soldiers from humans and apes? Could this explain the monkey man?
Some of the evidence that the monkey man is a human-ape hybrid could be that they are frequently reported wearing some sort of helmet or flashing lights and that kind of thing, which would probably be some sort of communications device. The most alarming feature that's reported are metal claws. That seems more of a military weapon. If such experimentation were going on and these creatures were intelligent enough, as presumably they would be, to escape from the facility that was creating them, they could certainly account for the monkey men.
Was the monkey man an escaped super soldier? And why, in an age of predator drones and nuclear bombs, would India need one?
Creating a super soldier using hybridization genetics would probably be a good solution for a country like India, where, yeah, they belong to the nuclear club, but it's not a very popular solution to solving one's problems as a country. A super soldier might be engineered for stealth purposes. They could pursue this type of a thing, especially since in India, monkeys and apes running around are not at all unusual. They could infiltrate, they could blend in, they could perform a number of different things in terms of intelligence gathering or otherwise performing some sort of military function without going detected. I do know if monkey men had been created with genetic engineering for a military purpose, I would be extremely concerned, if not deathly afraid, of the outcome.
Was a hybrid man-ape let loose on the streets of New Delhi? Are we creating man-made monsters? Weird. Or what? So there we have it. Monster stories from all over the world. In West Virginia, a winged monster 7 feet tall with red eyes terrorizes the town of Point Pleasant. In Newfoundland, a mysterious giant mass of flesh emerges from the depths of the ocean. And in India, a half-man, half-beast attacks thousands and sends an entire city into panic. Are these bizarre stories evidence that monsters exist? Can we dismiss thousands of eyewitnesses who claim these things are true? You decide. Join me again next time for more stories that will undoubtedly be weird or what? You know, I've been around for a while. I've met some interesting people. Done some crazy things. You'd think that there wasn't much that could take me by surprise. You'd be wrong. The world is full of stories and science and things that amaze and confound me every single day. Incredible mysteries that keep me awake at night. Some I can answer, and others just defy logic. Are man and monster closer than we think? In New Jersey, a woman and her son are attacked by a huge winged creature.
He was just frozen in terror.
Is it a demon from the 18th century? In South Carolina, a giant lizard-like beast terrorizes locals.
I wish I knew what was tearing up these cars.
Are reptoids from an underground world stalking us? And in Wisconsin, a ravenous and terrifying creature appears on a remote country road.
It looked like a large wolf head on top of a really husky, furry body.
Was it a werewolf?
Yeah, it's a weird world, and I love it.
You know, I love being in the woods. At one with nature. There's so many wonderful things to see and hear. Look at this little guy. But sometimes forests can be dark and downright terrifying places where you can stumble across things that defy the senses, things that are far more horrific than you could possibly imagine. Lori Winkleman is a mother of 3. She lives in southern New Jersey, next to an isolated forest known as the Pine Barrens.
It's very unexplored and unfriendly, I guess would be the best description.
Lori and her family moved here in 2003. It was then they witnessed the weird and eerie atmosphere of the forest firsthand.
There were no squirrels, there were no birds, there was nothing. It was just this quiet, still forest that was very creepy.
The family decides to avoid the woods at all costs. But on February 18th, 2004, an event takes place that would haunt them forever.
The night stands out in my mind originally because it was the first snowstorm we had down here.
Lori ventures outside to turn off the Christmas lights. Her 10-year-old son, Glenn Jr., insists on coming along to help.
I had made a buddy system for my kids so that no one was ever allowed to go out alone.
As Lori unplugs the lights, she suddenly notices something is very wrong with her little boy.
He was just frozen in terror.
Lori soon sees why. Someone, or something, is watching them.
It was horrible. It was huge. It had an ugly face, a snout. It had horrible red eyes, little horns, and I just remember it had a horrible bulbous forehead. It was the worst thing I've ever seen. It was just hideous.
It also has wings. Terrified, Lori and her son run for their lives, but the creature takes off in hot pursuit.
It swooped over our heads, heading in the same direction we were, towards the house. When we got to the back door, it was right over us.
Scrambling inside, they think they're safe, but whatever attacked them is still out there.
There was this like clacky metallic noise on the surface of the roof. I've never heard anything like it.
Terrified, Lori and Glenn huddled together for hours, waiting for the monster to crash through their roof. When they emerge the next morning, the creature is gone. But what they see is almost as frightening.
We went outside and we saw the tracks exactly where it landed. There were footprints, we couldn't believe it, perfect prints.
Lori takes photos of the prints. She's determined to solve the mystery, so she shows the evidence to rangers at a nearby state park.
I just said, please let me know what this is. Could it be a cougar? Could it be a bear?
It's neither. It's something beyond logic.
The older gentleman immediately just said, it's the Jersey Devil. You just had a Jersey Devil sighting. Well, I was embarrassed, to be honest. I didn't want to scare my neighbors or look like I was insane and seeing Elvis or UFOs.
But Lori and Glenn aren't the only ones. Thousands claim to have seen a demonic-like monster in the Pine Barren. They call it the Jersey Devil. This mysterious entity is believed to have inhabited the forest for over 200 years. Some believe its origins are closely linked to a local witch named Mrs. Leeds, who gave birth to her 13th child in the 18th century.
Legend has it, I believe it was deformed. It was horrible, ugly, horrible eyes, snout, horrible forehead. It grew very large and it was very powerful, and it broke out and escaped.
Was the winged creature that attacked Lori and her son the deformed child of an 18th century witch?
I know what I saw, and I know animals. I just felt like prey. For the first time in my life, I have never known what it felt like to be prey. And I just felt like that. It was awful. It was just really awful.
What exactly stalked Lori and her son in the woods behind her home? Are demons real? Women's Studies professor Deborah McGregor doesn't think the Jersey Devil exists, but she does have a monstrous theory.
Monster births were understood to be children of the devil.
During the 18th century, some children were born with serious defects due to infectious disease and intermarriage. They were known as monster births.
The mother of a monster baby would be damned because some people would say that she had sex with the devil.
Professor McGregor claims that not only did Mrs. Leeds suffer a tragic monster birth, but it occurred during a period of Christian fanaticism in New England, which made it seem like a sign that dark, supernatural forces were at work.
You might wonder how people got the idea of something being born with claws and horns. I think we don't know. The power of legend amazes me in terms of how long this story of the Leeds family should go on. This is from 1735 to 2011. I mean, that's really amazing. Someone still remembering that, a sighting of such a creature. People might have thought, well, that's the way a monster looks.
Is the Jersey Devil a deformed infant born to an 18th century woman? If so, how did it turn into the legend of a supernatural creature?
It'll keep your kids from going too far, and then maybe they won't get eaten.
A woman and her son are attacked by a winged creature in the woods behind their home. Was it a demon from the 18th century, or a legend inspired by a deformed baby? Psychology PhD student Ian Miller agrees the Jersey Devil is a type of monster, one that inhabits our minds.
The Jersey Devil is a great example of a meme.
According to Miller, a meme is an idea that is transmitted from person to person, infecting our brains much like a virus or a viral video.
Memes can describe all sorts of phenomena that we experience on a daily basis, whether it be fashion trends is a good example, or the adoption of different technologies.
Miller thinks memes enable legends to survive for hundreds or even thousands of years.
The Jersey Devil is it's an example of, I think, an urban legend, and urban legends are great instances of memes.
Miller is sure the Jersey Devil meme continues because it serves as a cautionary tale, making the Pine Barrens forest seem scary, even if it isn't.
The Jersey Devil, that's a great story that serves a purpose. It'll keep your kids from going too far, and then maybe they won't get eaten.
But how did a story of a deformed baby morph into the legend of the Jersey Devil? To demonstrate, Miller has set up an experiment to show how a meme works. in real time.
What we're going to try today is we're going to revisit a game that we might have played when we were younger called Broken Telephone.
A volunteer is shown an image of the Jersey Devil. She in turn describes what she's seen to the next person, and so on down the line. Through word of mouth, the idea evolves, becoming more fantastical each time it's retold.
I expect that a lot of the details about this picture are going to be completely lost. Is this monster eating an animal or is it eating a person? The way that the Jersey Devil is depicted in this image has definitely some horror influence to it. It's going to be a kind of scary picture. And I'm expecting that that's a component of the story that might well be repeated as we go down the chain.
By the end, the meme has become virtually unrecognizable from the original illustration.
Moment of truth, what do we got?
A wolf jumping on a nail in the forest.
A wolf jumping on a nail. If even one person along the chain misremembers something, these alterations to the story are just going to kind of explode. Here's what we got. I think it definitely illustrated the point that when one person tells another person, they're not making an identical copy of whatever was in the first person's head.
Psychology professor Doug Canlan agrees Lori Winkleman and her son saw something strange and frightening. But it wasn't a demon. It was a human child.
Since the founding of Rome, there have been stories about human beings who've been raised by animals.
They're called feral children. And they're surprisingly common. Over 400 of these bizarre cases have been documented worldwide.
In one case, the famous wolf girls of India, the girls actually grabbed birds and ate them raw.
But where do they come from? Is modern civilization creating wild, animal-like creatures that survive purely on primal instincts?
Historically, of course, the reason is that parents or guardians realize that they have a child who is not intellectually capable. They have inherited a real problem that's going to cost them their livelihood. The easiest thing is to leave them for nature to take care of. How would you know a feral child if you see one on the street? Well, you would find if you should chat with the person that they had difficulty understanding you, and certainly you had a difficulty understanding them. They probably would not have had a haircut, or done their hair, or had fingernails. They would be interested in knowing whether you had any food with you. And their clothing, if any, would be in tatters.
Wow, this story is getting more and more monstrous by the minute. First it's some witch having sex with the devil, and now this other guy actually believes that sweet, innocent children could become horrifying monsters. Is he crazy? Hey, no playing ball. Get off my lawn. I don't think he's crazy at all. Could Lori Winkleman really have mistaken a feral human child for a hideous monster? Professor Canlan says yes, thanks to the atmosphere of fear and terror inspired by the Pine Barrens.
If you're living in a place and you hear something out there every night, you're already primed to be frightened.
Canlan feels creepy environments make people think they're dealing with something much worse than it really is.
This leads to belief that one is dealing with a subhuman sort of beast who's apt to be dangerous. In point of fact, they're rarely dangerous.
So was the Jersey Devil a feral child roaming the forest? Or was it a deformed infant born to an 18th century woman? Or is the mystery of the creature only in our minds? We may never know. Weird or what? A small town in South Carolina is terrorized by a strange lizard creature.
We didn't know what we was up against.
Man-beasts. Throughout history, we've heard of mythical creatures that are somehow part human, part animal.
Now let's assume for a minute that they do exist. It might be possible, right? This throws up some very interesting questions. If they are half and half, which is which? Are they animals with the brains of humans, or humans with the brains of animals? And what do we prefer? Are man-beasts living among us? And if they are, would you want to live alongside a cold-blooded being whose emotions and thoughts are completely alien? In the summer of 1988, Liston Truesdale was the sheriff of Bishopville, South Carolina.
This kind of is a sleepy little community.
But things soon began to change. In a bizarre series of incidents, someone or something began attacking parked cars. But these were no ordinary acts of vandalism. The cars looked as though they had bite marks.
This was a very serious situation that attacked in cars, and we didn't know what we had. We didn't know where it was something that escaped from a circus truck, or somebody's pet bear, or what it could have been. We didn't know, and we just had to find out the best way we could. I wish I knew what was tearing up these cars. We didn't know what we was up against.
Liston would soon find out when one night, a terrified high school student named Chris Davis shows up at his police station.
Chris Davis was a kid, a 17-year-old boy at the time, and he started telling me what had happened to him. I couldn't believe what I was listening to. Chris Davis had a flat tire. He stopped to fix his flat tire side of the road. He finished fixing the tire, put his tools in the car, and looked across the road.
Davis can't comprehend what he sees. A gigantic green creature is watching him from the forest.
It was a huge, what he described as 7 feet tall or more, with big red eyes, looked to be a greenish in color, but he really didn't know, and had 3 fingers. Whatever it was scared the hell out of him.
The creature begins running towards him.
Chris Davis jumped in his car and slammed the door quick and sped off like a bat out of hell.
But the creature isn't giving up so easily.
The creature jumped on the trunk of the car and then onto the top of the car and was looking down at him through the windshield from the top.
Davis swerves the car, trying to dislodge it.
He thinks he threw him off. He had to throw him off.
Mystified, Sheriff Truesdale doesn't know what to make of the story.
I said, draw it. So he drew it.
Truesdale is stunned by the picture. It shows a lizard-like being that stands upright like a human.
It wasn't anything like I ever seen.
But Sheriff Truesdale needs to know if Davis is telling the truth.
We asked him if he would submit to a lie detector test. No problem, he said.
Davis passes the test. He isn't lying. But what had he seen? Davis's testimony isn't the only report. Soon dozens of others come forward to describe their encounters with a giant, lizard-like creature. But not everyone is convinced.
Well, a lot of people didn't believe it, and a lot of people thought it was a hoax.
Crop duster pilot Frank Mitchell knows it's no hoax. Why? He saw it too.
The morning of the sighting was a nice day. I got up with a very clear mind, happy as a lark. Fixed my coffee like I always do, lit my cigarette, and loaded the airplane as usual, and taxied on out to the runway.
Mitchell brings his plane up to takeoff speed.
Here I am coming 75 miles an hour, ready to take off.
Suddenly he sees something that turns his blood cold.
This thing come out about right where I'm standing, and just simply walked right across this runway, right in front of the airplane. This thing was 8 or 9 feet tall, or better. Looked like a big monkey maybe, with a larger nose maybe than a monkey would have, much taller, and a brownish, greenish looking skin. It had a lope in its walk, and it didn't run, it just walked across the runway.
It's too late to abort takeoff, so Mitchell keeps going. But as soon as he's in the air, the creature disappears into the
I come back around as quick as I could, but I never did see it again. And I didn't say anything about it. Then, a few days later, my buddy said, "Frank, I hear a racket in the woods out here." So I took the shotgun and walked out with him, and my wife followed me. And right under that light, she got a bit by a rattlesnake. The next day, after I carried her to the hospital, which she came out fairly okay, behind me here, there was a whole lot of damage in the woods back here, but I had no idea what did it. All right, unless it was what I had seen just a few days before.
Mitchell is convinced that the thing he saw is still out there.
I still hear a strange sound to this day that I cannot describe to you. I used to walk almost to the swamp at night, but I don't go anymore at night, period. This property right here I have loved ever since I've been here. However, now I'm curious about it at night, but I do love this property, but there is something out here somewhere in these woods around that swamp. It's a long swamp, and he may not be on this property right now, but it's a long swamp, and he can be anywhere, and I promise you he is somewhere.
Did Mitchell see the same animal that terrified Chris Davis? Was it a lizard man? Whatever it was, he's taking no chances.
I promise you I wouldn't come out here without my gun and a good flashlight.
Could so many witnesses be wrong? What is living in the swamps of South Carolina? Crypto hunter John Rhodes has a theory so weird, if true, it would change the history of evolution.
The lizard man of Bishopville evolved here. He continues to live here just like we do. It's just that we don't get to see these guys very often.
It's a wild idea. The lizard man is not half human, but a creature that has evolved alongside of us. A human-like reptile known as a reptoid.
A reptoid is a combinative word of reptilian and humanoid. And a reptoid is actually a being that has been looked at as being 7.5 feet tall. It's large, very muscular build, large chest. It's got a hand with an opposable thumb and 3 large fingers with claws. They don't seem to have any ears. There's no hair on the body. The eyes are very large and almond-looking with vertical slit pupils. They have 2 slits for a nose, and their lips and their jawline is very strong, and their mouth has no lips. It's lipless. And these beings are very imposing when you're looking at them, because you feel that there's just no chance to outrun them or to get away or anything like that. So it's a terrifying event to meet one for the first time. Reptoids evolved naturally on Earth through the lineage of reptiles or the dinosaurs, most likely the dinosaurs. We do actually have scientific evidence that supports this kind of conjecture. There was a scientist by the name of Dale Russell who worked with the Museum of Natural Sciences in Ottawa, Canada, and he was asked by NASA to speculate what extraterrestrial life would look like should we encounter it. And what he did was he took a dinosaur that was alive 65 million years ago named Troodon, and based on its fossil records, he was able to morphologically look forward in time past the point of where they died out to see exactly what they would have looked like later on down the line in history. And the model he came up with was strikingly similar to those reported by people like in Bishopville, South Carolina, or across the United States, but also historically, because the historical records are filled with serpent-like beings or anthropological serpent-like beings who have the ability to talk to humans.
Rhodes thinks this points to an astonishing conclusion, that the dinosaurs never actually died out, and may even have evolved in similar ways to human beings.
There's potential for a convergent evolution between mammals and what we would think of as dinosaurs.
To support his case, Rhodes claims the reptoid's ancestor was an unusually smart dinosaur called the Truodo.
It was intelligent. It had a large brain case. Its eyes were actually coming from the side of its head towards the front of its face to allow it to have stereoscopic vision. It made a better hunter.
Could a supposedly extinct dinosaur have evolved into the creature they call the lizard man? Here's what the lizard man might look like, an artist's conception of a modern-day Truodon.
This illustration is actually very similar to those descriptions provided by the individuals who have sighted the lizard man in Bishopville.
Did Chris Davis encounter a reptoid evolved from a dinosaur? Rhodes believes not only do reptoids exist with an intelligence to rival ours, but they are living right under our feet.
From the research that we've done, it appears that reptilian humanoids and their small populations live in geologically remote areas underground with technology just like we have on the planet. Are they more advanced than us? That's somewhat questionable. If they have evolved longer than us, I would say that's definite.
Is an advanced reptoid civilization living somewhere deep inside the Earth? Rhodes realizes his theory sounds far-fetched.
Keep in mind, as fantastic as this sounds, scientists know we've only cataloged about 4% of all life on Earth. That means that there's anywhere from 100 to 200 million life forms on our planet we haven't even seen and cataloged yet.
Could dinosaurs have survived all these years and evolved hidden from view? Or could there be another explanation?
There's many things in the environment that can cause mutations.
A strange creature terrorizes the town of Bishopville, South Carolina. Half man, half lizard. Shannon Bard, professor of environmental toxicology at Dalhousie University, doesn't think the lizard man is an evolved dinosaur. She raises an even more bizarre possibility, that the creature could be a normal reptile mutated into a monster by toxic chemicals.
There's many things in the environment that can cause mutations. There can be different chemicals in the environment which can interact at a cellular level and actually cause the DNA to get breaks in it, and that causes a mutation. These could be generated at an industrial site or at a hazardous waste site and could accidentally be introduced into the environment, and you could get exposure that way. So different chemicals in industrial processes, different drugs can be very potent, and there are also situations in which a chemical itself or a drug itself may not act as a mutagen itself, but it may disrupt cellular function in such a way that a mutation actually occurs. There's damage to the cell, and it causes stress in the cell, and then a mutation results as a secondary effect.
Sometimes these mutations can create giants.
There are many factors involved in producing animals that may be growing larger or stronger than their parents. They could potentially have some mutations in their genes, which would increase the level of growth hormones.
What if the lizard man is a mutant monster? How did it become one? Guess what? A toxic waste dump was located right near Bishopville at the time of the lizard man sightings.
Very poor areas or remote areas were selected for hazardous waste dumps, areas that weren't being used. And many years ago, we weren't aware of the fact that many of the chemicals could be leaching from these disposal sites into the environment where animals could be exposed to them. In this particular site, there was discharge of the waste into surrounding water bodies. And so you could have a situation in which mutagens would enter into the aquatic environment, and different organisms living there could potentially be exposed.
Strange creatures emerging from toxic waste dumps, transformed from cute little critters to giant mutant beasts that terrify the planet. Ridiculous, isn't it? Well, I gotta tell you, I don't think it is. I've had some very serious issues with my plumbing lately. And if whatever it is living in there escapes, all of us are doomed. Could the lizard man be a giant rampaging mutant? Ben Radford is the deputy editor of the Skeptical Inquirer magazine.
I'm investigating the lizard man as, for example, a homicide detective would investigate a murder. You look at eyewitnesses, you look at forensic evidence.
He thinks there's less to the lizard man phenomenon than meets the eye.
You see the same thing with a lot of these sort of mysterious monsters. You don't have direct evidence of these things. You have very, very few eyewitness sightings.
Why? Simple. Radford claims people invoke the lizard man whenever something unusual happens in Bishopville.
People aren't saying, I saw the lizard man. People are saying, this is weird, what could it be? Oh, there's a lizard man down the road, that must be it. It's an interesting psychological phenomena where people, they attribute things that they can't explain to monsters.
But Radford is certain what really drives the lizard man stories is money.
Of course, the lizard man has been an economic boom for Bishopville and elsewhere. People cashing in on it.
Then there's the lizard man merchandise.
We have, of course, a bumper sticker. Who doesn't need that on your minivan? Lizard man butter beans. I have no idea what this is. It's not for human consumption, I do know that. Dun 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 dun! The lizard man t-shirts. Not just one, mind you, we've got a whole bunch of them. We also got another lizard man shirt.
Does this mean that the lizard man is a hoax and everyone in Bishopville is in on the joke? Not necessarily.
Yeah, I think it began as a hoax, but then after that came misunderstandings, misperceptions, people who were like, well, something damaged my car, must be the lizard man. Well, no, it could be any number of things, not necessarily the lizard man.
If it is a hoax, how do we explain Christopher Davis? Didn't he pass a lie detector test?
I tried to track down the polygraph test. I couldn't find anyone who would give me any information on it. I'm not saying he didn't, I'm just saying if he did, then where's the evidence for it?
And again, if the lizard man doesn't exist, how does he account for all the cars damaged by the creature?
I've seen the photos, and I'm not impressed. It's clear that whatever these marks are, they're not bite marks, period. End of story. To my mind, the most compelling evidence for the lizard man is probably Dixie Rawson's minivan. Her story is that she came out one morning, actually I think her husband did, Robert, and he saw these weird scratches and holes in the front grille of their Dodge minivan. And we're like, what's going on here? What caused this damage to the car? And it actually wasn't Dixie or her husband that originally came up with the idea that the lizard man had attacked it. It was actually her neighbors. She told her neighbors, like, well, isn't this weird? Her neighbors like, that must be caused by the lizard man. And then she's like, oh, okay. And she'd never heard the story before. And so she basically she basically believed what they said. And, if her neighbors are telling her that it's a lizard man, maybe it's a lizard man, who knows? What's interesting about it is that her husband actually didn't believe that. Her husband thought that it was caused by a bear.
Radford has a simple explanation. Vandalism. And he thinks he can prove it. At a junkyard outside Albuquerque, New Mexico, Radford will test his theory. Radford believes he can replicate the so-called lizard man damage using common household items.
I have a variety of tools I'm going to use, including a pellet gun, I have a hammer, a pickaxe, a saw. Is it vandalism or teeth marks from lizard man? Let's find out. This is an attempt to bring some science to it. This gets beyond eyewitness sightings, beyond the reports, to real physical evidence.
Finally, Radford gets the results he's looking for.
I had a lot of success with one of the screwdrivers that makes holes that look pretty much exactly like the teeth marks. My guess is that it wasn't a lizard man that attacked the vehicle, it was a screwdriver.
Is the lizard man of Bishopville an intelligent reptoid descended from dinosaurs? Is it a mutant lizard born in a toxic waste dump? Or is it a hoax designed to boost the local economy and cover up for vandals? Weird. Or what? A man is attacked by a terrifying and bloodthirsty creature in Elkhorn, Wisconsin. Was it a werewolf?
I have never seen an animal that ever looked like that.
Dogs. Man's best friend. Take Fluffy here, for example. Even though he eats me out of house and home, I'd die for this guy. I love him. He gives me companionship, protection. Well, maybe not so much protection, but so much love. Really, I couldn't live without him. But what if under this harmless exterior, what if there's something evil inside? What if Fluffy isn't a dog at all, but half dog, half human? Yes, you heard me right. What if your lovely pet was a werewolf that could rip you apart? You might feel different, right? Do werewolves exist? Impossible? maybe not. Oh my God, this is horrible. You need a bath, young man. Elkhorn, Wisconsin. Stephen Kruger works for the local Department of Natural Resources. His job? Collecting deer carcasses from the highway at night.
I'd always pick up at night and grab the deer, bring them back in the morning to the landfill, to the local landfill, and dump them off.
But on the night of November 8th, 2006, Stephen came across something else, something so weird, it burned into his memory.
I was out traveling, doing my normal DNR deer pickup, and there was a deer I came across on Holy Hill Road that was not on the scheduled pickup list.
He stops to check the animal.
It was about an 80-pound deer, a doe. They threw down the tailgate, tossed it in the back of the truck. We had to go back in the cab to fill out the paperwork to be able to take the deer properly.
But this routine job is about to become a nightmare. Suddenly, Stephen feels the truck shudder.
Didn't faze me at first. I thought it might have been the wind or something. And then it shook more vigorously the second time. I looked in the rear view mirror and there it was.
What he sees makes no sense. Something bizarre is climbing onto his truck.
I just saw it from the head to the shoulders, a little bit below the shoulders. It looked like it was reaching into the truck to grab, and which I'm only assuming was the deer that I just put in there.
What could be strong enough to carry out the 36-kilogram deer?
It looked like a large wolf head on top of a really husky, furry body. It was something I never have ever seen before, and I've seen pretty much every animal that I thought was in the state of Wisconsin, from bear to wolves to coyotes.
But Stephen's confusion is about to turn to terror. As he watches, the creature stands on its two hind legs, like a man.
I guessed it to be around 6.5 to 7 feet tall. It could have been a very large wolf on its hind legs. I've never seen that before. Stared at it for about, I don't even know if it was 5 seconds, might even be too long. I threw the truck into drive because it scared the living daylights out of me, and I hit the gas.
Stephen thinks he's safe until he hears something strange.
I did hear the clunk of the ramp hitting the ground. There was a distinctive metal hitting the pavement type of sound.
Somehow, the animal has pulled the deer and the heavy metal ramp right off his truck. Despite his fear, he decides he must go back.
I did need to go back and get the ramp because that was a vital part of my job. On the heavier deer, I can't pick up a 180-pound deer on my own.
Stephen returns to the scene, but the creature has vanished.
When I got back to the area, I just grabbed my flashlight and the ramp, the deer, everything was gone. Did not find anything.
Whatever it was strong enough to drag the deer and the ramp off into the woods. Frightened and confused, Stephen heads straight to the police.
I figured it was an aggressive animal, whatever it was, so I decided to stop in at the Washington County Sheriff's Department and report the incident.
Stephen recounts his weird encounter, but remarkably, the police aren't surprised. They've heard the story before. The creature even has a name. They call it the Bray Road Beast. The mysterious animal has been sighted hundreds of times, going back at least 3 decades.
They did take me serious on it. They did send out 2 squads to take a look for it, but they did not find anything either.
What did Stephen Kruger see? What animal stands like a human and has super strength? Could this be evidence that werewolves exist?
I have never seen an animal that ever looked like that. I don't think I ever will see another animal that looks like that, to be honest.
You know, of all the things in the human psyche, a werewolf is one of the most terrifying. I mean, just look how ugly this guy is. But actually coming into contact with one, now that's scary. What do? Well, you can use one of these. Do silver bullets really work? Well, perhaps you'd use one of these.
I hope you didn't think I meant that ugly crap.
Folklorist James Lauder is an expert on werewolves. He says they are more myth than monster.
There have always been stories about people transforming into animals. You can go back and look at the myths. In Christian theology and in Christian writings, they represent humankind falling into the control of Satan.
No one can run from the werewolves.
But if werewolves don't exist, why did we invent them? Because they enable us to cope with the darkest sides of our nature.
It's a manifestation of the dual nature of humanity. So you can seem like a good person at one point, and you can do horrible things in another instance. The werewolf allows people to deal with the anxiety that anyone is capable of doing horrible things. Horror allows people to confront things in their lives that make them uncomfortable or that cause them stress or anxiety. And it's not surprising that horror is so successful now. Everyday life is incredibly stressful for a lot of people for all kinds of reasons. But when they view a horror movie or they read a horror story, it allows them to confront those fears, confront those anxieties, and it hopefully dismiss them then at the end, or at least feel better about their situation.
But if this is true, what did Steve Kruger see? Was it just a trick of his mind? Lauder has another compelling theory.
He's somebody who's been a hunter. As a contractor for the DNR, he's seen animal bodies. He knows what they look like. He recognized that it was something that he didn't understand what it was, and that it was an animal.
But what animal fits the description given by Steve Kruger and hundreds of others who have come into contact with the Bray Road beast?
Normally, we get the gray wolf, is the typical kind of wolf we see in the state. More recently, environmentalists have found that there are eastern wolves that have moved into the area.
Could two species of wolves be breeding, creating a new hybrid creature?
It's certainly possible that there are species in the area that people haven't identified. It certainly could have been a species of wolf that he hadn't seen before, or some kind of animal that is a hybrid.
Is the Bray Road beast a new, frightening species of superwolf? Or is the explanation even weaker? Researcher Phil Dingra has a mind-blowing idea. Sightings like this are evidence of an incredible evolutionary leap. Wolves that have evolved to walk on two legs.
It's very much possible that what people saw are animals that are exhibiting bipedal behavior. Could be a wolf, could be a bear, could be something else. Bipedalism isn't actually that hard.
Dingra claims wolves could have become bipedal through a natural process.
Punctuated equilibrium is the idea that rapid changes in evolution can happen in a short period of time.
But why would wolves want to walk like us?
We trap their rabbits, we kill their deer, and we have read about wolves declining population. Eventually they're going to go extinct.
Dingra believes wolves are being forced to evolve in order to survive. The ability to stand upright can give animals an edge, especially when it comes to scaring off competitors.
There's many advantages to walking on two legs. I think the ones that are commonly cited for why humans found it advantageous to walk on two legs is that in the savannas, when all the vegetation was getting scarce, they were able to see above the horizon to look for other places for food. So that's called the visibility hypothesis. Another advantage to standing on two legs is for display. It's called the display hypothesis. This is about threatening other rivals. If you stand up, you are taller, you are larger, you're more threatening.
If true, the Bray Road beast would be in good company. All kinds of animals, from birds to kangaroos, have evolved to become bipedal.
What we have to really think about is that all of the features of the Bray Road beast, none of these things are exotic. It is a creature that is straight out of the animal family, animal kingdom.
Did Stephen Kruger and hundreds of others see a wolf that has learned to walk on 2 feet? And if so, why hasn't it been caught?
It's some sort of other dimensional manifestation.
A terrifying creature attacked Stephen Kruger's truck in Lowell, Wisconsin. Was it a werewolf? wolf that learned to walk like a man? Paranormal phenomena expert Linda Godfrey apparently has the answer. She was a reporter on the scene when the first Bray Road beast sightings began in 1991.
To my surprise, when I began to investigate, I found out that there was a wide variety of witnesses. None of them seemed to have anything to gain by lying, and most of them were genuinely frightened by what they had seen.
These eyewitnesses described a beast much like the one that attacked Stephen Kruger's truck.
They were seeing a creature that stood 5 to 7 feet tall, looked like an upright wolf running or walking on its hind legs.
Godfrey's investigation led her to a startling revelation. The creature is something distant.
It's some sort of other dimensional manifestation, similar to the Native American concept of spirit creatures that cross back and forth from a spirit world to ours.
Does the Bray Road beast travel a bridge between our reality and another being? Yes, says Godfrey, and here's how. They use ancient Native American religious sites as portals to the spirit world. They're called effigy mounds, man-made piles of earth in the shape of animals, and Wisconsin has more of them than anywhere in the world.
They represented different facets of the animal kingdom, from water creatures to land creatures to air creatures. The people who built the effigy mounds, their shamans were able to bring forth spirits that would guard the mounds.
Could this be true? Well, think about this. Most sightings of the Bray Road beast have taken place in or around effigy mounds. Is the creature somehow using ancient religious sites as a gateway from another dimension?
But it just is very odd that the hot spots of dogman sightings are all very close to these concentrations of certain types of effigy mounds. I discovered almost accidentally that concentrations of a certain type of effigy mound that have a very long tail and are either called the panther, lizard, or water spirit mound correspond almost exactly with hotspot sightings areas of the dogman. I don't pretend to fully understand it, and I hope someday that I figure out a little bit more about it.
Was the creature that terrified Stephen Kruger a supernatural being from another world? Is the Bray Road beast a wolf that evolved to walk on 2 legs? Or are werewolves real and living in Wisconsin? Whatever the truth, this story is most definitely weird, or what? So there we have it. 3 stories of mysterious creatures that seem to be half-beast. A winged demon suggests an 18th century legend is true. Does the Jersey Devil really exist? A lizard terrorizes residents of a South Carolina community. Is it a highly evolved dinosaur? A giant wolf-like creature is repeatedly seen in Wisconsin. Is the Bray Road beast a real-life werewolf? You decide. Join me next time for more stories that will undoubtedly be weird, or what? You know, I've been around for a while. I've met some interesting people. Done some crazy things. You'd think that there wasn't much that could take me by surprise. You'd be wrong. The world is full of stories and science and things that amaze and confound me every single day. Incredible mysteries that keep me awake at night. Some I can answer, and others just defy logic. Can we suddenly disappear without a trace? 3 men vanished from a yacht off the coast of Australia.
There was no trace of blood, there was no damage to the ship.
Were they abducted by undersea aliens? In Vermont, almost a dozen people disappeared from a remote mountain wood.
All they ever found was a few empty bullet shells.
Were they attacked by a Sasquatch? And in Tasmania, a pilot is chased by an unknown craft before disappearing.
could possibly say it was murder.
Was he shot down by a UFO?
Yeah, it's a weird world, and I love it. The Mary Celeste, magnificent, isn't she? This 280-ton brigantine was found fully seaworthy and floating unmanned in the Atlantic in 1872. Abandoned by her entire crew and passengers. All their belongings and 6 months' supplies were still on board, untouched. What happened to them? Throughout history, tales of vanishings have mystified and baffled us. Can people simply disappear from the face of the earth? This extraordinary story is regarded as the greatest maritime mystery of all time. Or it was. Until 2007.
April 14th, 2007. 3 men set out on a cruise off the eastern coast of Australia. For Des Batten and brothers Peter and Jim Tunstead, it's the adventure of a lifetime. A 5,000-kilometer, 8-week voyage that will take them past some of the most spectacular coastline in the world. Julie Sharp is a Queensland attorney.
It was a journey that was in the planning for some considerable period. The 3 men each undertook various courses, including first aid.
Des, the owner of Cas 2, is an experienced amateur sailor who's made several trips in the area.
Des Batten had a long-standing interest in boating and had owned a number of vessels in the past, including a 40-foot cruising vessel. Jim Tunstead had significant experience in sailing smaller sailing boats. He had competed in 14-foot skiff racing regularly in the past.
It will be the longest journey any of them has attempted.
The purpose of the journey was to transport the Cas 2 from Airlie Beach back to Western Australia where the Battens lived. The voyage was ambitious, to say the least.
The 3 men set out from Able Point Marina on a beautiful Sunday morning.
People who saw the men before they set off on the journey on that morning described them as being in good spirits.
Jim decides to capture the moment for posterity.
The last record of them is some video footage that was taken on board the Cas 2. We think at about 10:05 a.m, so a couple of hours into the voyage.
Clouds ahead.
Peter Tunstead was fishing off the back of the boat, and Des Batten was at the helm. Everything was normal.
In their final contact with the outside world, Des checks in with a radio operator on shore, a routine precaution.
A local marine rescue volunteer had radio contact with the men.
But the yacht fails to show up at its next anchorage on Cape Gloucester. And calls to Jim Tunstead's cell phone go unanswered. 3 days later, the Cas 2 is spotted by the Australian Coast Guard, miles off course and drifting aimlessly. Photojournalist Cameron Laird is one of the first to reach the missing yacht.
The ship was abandoned and it was just floating adrift in the ocean, with sails just blowing wildly in the breeze, and you could tell clearly that something was wrong. When the search and rescue found the boat, they lowered crewmen who went in and checked to see if there were anyone on board.
Rescuers find no sign of the crew, but even more alarming, they find evidence that whatever took place on board must have taken them by surprise.
Keys were still in the ignition of the boat, the maps were still laid out on the table, sugar and tea bags were still in the kitchen, fishing lines were still on board, there was a laptop still running at the time. There were still life jackets on board, the orange fluorescent life ring was still on board, the safety buoys were still attached to the boat, everything looked fine, it just looked like that someone had driven the boat into port and parked.
Mysteriously, the only thing that's out of place is an ordinary piece of fishing line.
There was fishing line and a lure tangled around the portside rudder, and that was where Peter Tunstead was seen to be fishing.
The authorities launch a massive search and rescue operation
by air and sea.
They sent search and rescue helicopters and fixed-wing planes. I think also maybe the Army were involved with some Army aircraft as well.
The Cas-2 is towed into port where the police and forensic teams comb the vessel for clues.
There was no trace of blood, there was no damage to the ship, there was no broken glasses or anything in the cabin. Nothing untoward had happened.
The 3 men were never found. To this day, the case of the Cas-2 remains one of Australia's most enduring, unsolved mysteries.
Nobody really knew whether the men were dead or alive, and they had disappeared in such mysterious circumstances. Nothing could explain the fate of the men.
Sadly, that should really never have happened.
You know, I love the ocean. Boats are my passion. Wind in your hair, the smell of the sea, makes me feel alive. But I gotta tell you, this story is weird or what? I mean, we all know that sailors have to have respect for the sea, right? But here they are on a perfect day, on a perfect boat. What were they doing? I mean, let's face it, what could possibly go wrong? Almost anything.
What happened to the men on board the Cas-2? Cryptozoologist Adam McGurr thinks it was something monstrous, a giant squid.
We now know that these animals live in our oceans and went virtually undetected, aside from legends and stories from sailors saying that they encountered or were attacked by a large squid-like animal.
McGurr says the giant squid has gone from legend to reality as scientists have studied the elusive creature up close.
In 2007, fishermen off the southern tip of New Zealand actually captured the largest recorded specimen of a colossal squid, and it measured 33 feet long from the tip of its head to the end of its tentacles, and it was estimated to weigh about 1,100 pounds.
But could a giant squid account for the loss of the Cas-2's crew? McGurr says the animals have attacked small boats before, especially in the warm waters of the Pacific.
In 2003, there were a couple of French sailors attempting to circumnavigate the globe. All of a sudden, they lost control of their boat. And on the rear of the ship, they found a gargantuan squid wrapped around the rudder, making it so that they couldn't turn or control the boat in any way. After some time, when they stopped the ship, the squid released its grasp and went down to the depths, and they were able to continue on their way. But this is a perfect example of a very close encounter with a giant squid.
Although the creatures aren't aggressive, they are inquisitive and constantly on the lookout for a meal.
A colossal squid may look up at the surface and see the bottom of a boat and interpret that as a large fish that it might like to go after, or possibly even a whale. And throughout history, several whale carcasses have been found with extremely large sucker marks on their skin, indicating that they have either gone after the squid to eat them or been locked in some type of struggle or battle with the squid. So I think mostly a squid would come up to the surface out of either curiosity or necessity because it's chasing prey. And if it were to encounter a small boat, it would try and explore that boat using its arms and tentacles.
McGurr thinks if one of the creatures did intercept the yacht, it was quite capable of sweeping the crew overboard.
A colossal squid actually has very sharp serrated edges on its suction cups in order to grab a hold of prey and prevent them from escaping. You're basically at the mercy of the squid at that point.
Did a giant squid attack the Cas-2? Or does the key to the mystery lie even deeper?
There are extraterrestrial beings who have encounters in the ocean.
3 men disappear from a yacht off the coast of Australia. Were they attacked by a giant squid? Psychotherapist Barbara Lamb agrees that what caused the Cas-2 tragedy came from the ocean depths, but it's weirder than any sea monster.
There's no doubt in my mind that there are extraterrestrial beings who do have encounters in the ocean with many human beings.
Lamb is convinced not only is the Cast 2 crew still alive, they are being held captive by aliens using stealthy underwater vehicles.
A USO is an undersea or an unidentified sea object. We do feel convinced that there are these USOs as well as UFOs, unidentified flying objects.
Lamb learned about USOs from a surprising source, her own patients. She got them to reveal buried memories of alien sightings through a controversial technique called regression therapy.
Okay, does there seem to be any presence of anyone in addition to the light? Regression is a form of hypnosis where a person comes in with a particular concern, maybe an event, to find out the details that he or she does not remember consciously. So the process is that I conduct a nice 10 or 15 minutes worth of deep relaxation suggestions, and the person does become very nice and deeply relaxed. And during that process of the relaxation, I suggest that the person is going to go back to whatever that issue is or that event that they want to know more of the details about. So when we get into a fully relaxed state, then I just ask questions about, what are you aware of? What are you seeing? What are you feeling? What are you experiencing in any way? And the person in this very relaxed state is now having images and awarenesses of details from that experience. In the case of regressing somebody to what we think might have been an extraterrestrial encounter, we go back to the first little glimpse or hints that something unusual might be happening. This could be something that happened last week, or last month, last year, last decade, even 30 or 40 years earlier, if that's what the person wants to discover more about. So I give the suggestion that they go back to those first few moments of awareness. I would say maybe 1/4 of the people who come to me have had extraterrestrial encounters. Do you hear a voice as this is happening? Or how is it?
No, he's talking to me through my mind.
Over the years, her patients gave such detailed accounts of USOs, Lamb had to accept they were real.
One client who lives right close to the Southern California coast has many times seen a disc-shaped craft shooting up from under the ocean. This craft kind of docked with or attached to a building that seemed to be down on the floor of the ocean.
Some of the stories had chilling similarities with the Cast 2 incident.
I know one man who lost his entire family that was on a huge yacht. They sailed from Bermuda in the 1950s. About 10 different people on it disappeared. Nothing was ever found, no life ring, nothing.
Did undersea aliens kidnap the Cast 2 sailors? Or is the solution more urgent? Police Constable Patrick McLeod works in the Marine Unit of the Toronto Police Service.
The ghost ship scenario isn't as rare as people think. We find vessels all the time that are abandoned.
McLeod is confident the disappearance of the Cast 2 crew is no more than a tragic accident.
I think what happened to these fellows on the Cast 2 was simply a man overboard disaster.
How can he be so sure? McLeod points to a single clue found by rescuers: a tangled fishing line.
Looks like one of the guys was fishing and his lure got tied up on the back of the rudder. He might have been down there trying to free it, fell overboard. His brother jumps in to save him. And the other fellow might have been in a panic.
What began as a simple mishap quickly spiraled out of control, with Des trying desperately to rescue his friend.
try to come back to save them, and during the rescue fell overboard himself. Once they're off the vessel, there's virtually no chance of them getting back on. The CAS-2 catamaran, even at its slow speed, would be uncatchable by the best swimmer in the world.
Did the crew of the CAS-2 drown because they couldn't catch up to their boat? Constable McLeod is going to test his theory by staging an experiment.
Ready? Up.
Today we're here in a controlled situation to see if a swimmer falling off the back of a boat can actually swim to catch up with it when it's going approximately 12 kilometers an hour.
An inflatable dinghy will be towed at the same speed as the CAS-2. A trained police swimmer will play the role of the sailors.
Derek, you're going to fall overboard like something's happened, but try to get back to that dinghy as fast as you can and see if you can get on board. Okay, let's go, guys.
Constable McLeod will measure the dinghy's speed with a radar gun.
3, 2, 1, pull!
They get the dinghy moving at 4 kilometers an hour, less than half the CAS-2 speed. But even at this reduced velocity, Derek simply can't.
Even in a controlled situation in a pool with a very fit person, a very young person, a trained person, that he was still unable to catch that dinghy at a much slower speed than we thought the CAS-2 was going. There's no way that these older gentlemen are going to be able to catch that vessel. They're basically doomed.
Were the men on board of the CAS-2 snatched by a sea monster? Were they abducted by undersea aliens? Or did they simply fall overboard in a tragic accident? Weird. Almost a dozen people vanished from a remote mountain forest.
All that was left behind was empty bullet shells.
You know, these days, modern technology has made hiking through the forest easy. You've got a GPS in case you get lost.
Go straight ahead.
Digital compass tells you what direction you're headed in.
North.
Shockproof watch, hunting knife, safety vest for visibility. They make stuff to protect you from just about any situation. But there's one thing that nothing will save you from, and that's a forest that swallows you whole.
Bennington, Vermont is a historic town set against the breathtaking scenery of Green Mountain National Forest. But it also borders on an area Native Americans have avoided for hundreds of years, believing it to be inhabited by dark and vengeful spirits. Glastonbury Mountain. Joe Derwin is a local journalist and folklorist.
Glastonbury Mountain comes across as a creepy place. It's high and dark and remote and heavily wooded, and there's a ghost town. There is sort of this old New England aura of haunted houses and dark forests and mysterious secrets.
One of the region's most puzzling mysteries is that of James Tedford. On December 1st, 1949, James is making his way home after visiting relatives.
Tedford was a veteran who lived in Bennington.
He had taken this bus countless times, but tonight he attracts more attention than normal.
There was a sighting of James Tedford in St. Albans, Vermont. He was seen by a friend there during a stop.
But when the bus pulls into Bennington, all is not well. James isn't there.
He was seen on a bus by 14 witnesses at one stop, and then by the next stop, he was mysteriously gone, and all that was left behind was his luggage.
Police are called in to investigate, but no trace of the man is ever found.
We don't know what happened to him after that.
But James's disappearance isn't the only unsolved missing persons case in the Bennington area. Exactly 3 years earlier, Paula Weldon was hiking the Long Trail, one of Bennington's most famous tourist attractions.
Paula Weldon was an attractive 18-year-old student at Bennington College. She left the campus on December 1st, and she went walking up the Long Trail towards the top of Glastonbury Mountain.
Despite the cold, Paula isn't alone in the forest. Other hikers see her as she disappears around a bend. They think nothing of it until they too round the corner. Paula is nowhere to be seen.
She was seen by several people on the way, and then at some point, she simply disappeared.
Police and the FBI mount one of the biggest manhunts in Vermont history.
It was probably the most extensive of any of the searches. It was one of the first times helicopters were used over the area to look for someone.
Paula is never heard from again. Even more puzzling is what happens to Mitty Rivers, a local guide and outdoorsman.
Mitty Rivers is a guy in his 60s, very experienced in the woods. He was hunting with his son-in-law. He went into an area called Hell Hollow, which he knew quite well, and he went off by himself for a little while, and he was never seen again.
Mitty has vanished, almost within earshot of his companion.
When his relatives went to look for him, he was nowhere to be found, and they searched for days. There was massive manhunts, and all they ever found was a few of his empty bullet shells on a trail.
These and 5 other mysterious disappearances between 1945 and 1950 lead the area to be christened the Bennington Triangle.
The legend of the Bennington Triangle is this apex of weirdness and mystery, sort of a almost Bermuda-like triangle, but on land.
Then in May 1951, a potential breakthrough. The police come across something they've never seen before in the Bennington Triangle cases, a body. It belongs to a hiker who disappeared the previous autumn.
Of the disappearances in the Bennington Triangle that I've heard of, only one really stands out as being resolved, partially at least, in terms of a body being found, and that's a woman from Massachusetts named Frida Langer.
The autopsy doesn't reveal how she died, and even more perplexing, she's found in an area that has been searched previously. Police now wonder if a serial killer is on the loose, abducting his victims both on foot and in vehicles. The public dubs him the Bennington Ripper.
Usually with serial killers, you see a lot of conformity in the types of victims. With these disappearances, you don't see that. You don't see similarities in age, gender, background, clothing, anything.
The theory is discarded for lack of evidence.
In the end, all we know for sure is that they were not found.
Who or what is responsible for the victims of the Bennington Triangle? Can people simply vanish off the face of the earth? Author Christopher Noel isn't so sure.
There is a strong possibility that these disappearances could be related to Sasquatches or one Sasquatch in the area, given that there have been many sightings of these creatures over the years in the Bennington area.
The Sasquatch, also known as Bigfoot, is a legendary ape-like creature thought to inhabit the forests of North America. Noel has been studying them for years.
A Sasquatch could easily snatch us off a trail. It could snatch more than one of us if it wanted to. It's quite possible that there was a rogue Sasquatch, probably a male, who was operating outside the normal range of Sasquatch behavior.
He points to an incident that took place only 20 years before the first Bennington Triangle case.
A man named Albert Ostman was taken from his campsite and carried to a small box canyon where he was held captive for 6 days.
The victim not only survived, he escaped to tell the tale. The world's earliest documented Bigfoot abduction.
He described what it looked like, how they behaved, in very exquisite detail that hadn't been known at the time and has been confirmed over and over and over by sightings down through the years. There's just been too many reports of intimidation behavior and sightings of Sasquatch here in the Bennington area to discount this possibility, especially around Glastonbury Mountain. I spoke with a man last year who had been in a hunting trailer on Glastonbury Mountain, and he and his buddies had woken up in the middle of the night when the trailer was shaken violently. And nothing else is going to be shaking a trailer like that. They opened the door and they saw something in the dark, but they could see it running away on 2 legs. It would just be absurd to rule out this possibility without looking into it more deeply, especially considering the context of sightings and intimidation behavior that we have here in the historical record.
Did Bigfoot abduct the Bennington Triangle victims? If so, why was only one body ever found?
I'm sure that these creatures, if they abducted these people, took them far away from where people ever go. into the thick, thick parts of the woods, high up, in caves, and we just never would have happened across them.
See, I don't think this is fair. Something weird happens, and boom, poor old Sasquatch takes the rap. Again, did he kidnap the victims? I don't think so. And here's why. Bigfoot is described in reports as a hairy, ape-like creature, 10 feet tall, over 500 pounds, with large eyes, a pronounced brow, and low-set forehead covered in dark red hair. The enormous footprints for which it is known are 24 inches long and 8 inches wide, and get this, the creature is commonly reported to have a strong, unpleasant smell by those who claim to have encountered it. Now, I have one question. How on earth could a doofus like that take anyone by surprise?
Is Bigfoot to blame for the Vermont vanishing? Or was it another kind of killer?
When they're hungry, food is food.
8 people vanished from the Bennington Triangle in Vermont. Were they kidnapped by Bigfoot? Bennington hunting and fishing guide George Prouty says no.
I think the only animal in this area that would attack and kill a human would be a mountain lion. We know there's big cats up here. When the food population is low and they're hungry, food is food.
Prouty has no doubt the animals have what it takes to take down a fully grown man.
A mountain lion is a big cat. They're very protective of their game. What they kill, they usually cart away. Even my size, a 200-pound person, a cat like that can drag and actually carry up a tree, put on a limb and take their time to devour it. And after a period of time, you'd think even the clothing would be visible. Yet a denning animal, an animal that goes into a cave or a den, which a mountain lion that has young, that's where they're going to be. They're not going to be up in a tree somewhere. The clothing is all hidden. It's all gone. Once the food is gone and the clothing is there, there's no way to recover it. It's in a cat den, or it's in a place where it's not recoverable.
Prouty says details of the vanishings match the way big cats stalk their prey.
It's always been a single person, and when a mountain lion goes on attack, that's their ultimate goal, is to get one individual singled out from the crowd, then that's the one they're going to choose to attack.
Did a mountain lion devour the victims of the Bennington Triangle? How does this explain James Tedford vanishing from a moved U.S.? Astrophysics author Morris Franks thinks the missing people fell victim to an exotic phenomenon of modern science, a wormhole.
The wormhole is a tunnel between 2 points in space and time, where if something went in one end of the wormhole, it would come out instantly at the other end, no matter how far away that other end may be. In other words, not limited by the Einstein's limit on the speed of light, 186,284 miles per second, as the speed of travel, but instantaneous communication. Wormholes unquestionably exist at the subatomic level. There's no question about that. And apparently there is no limit to the size to which a wormhole can be made.
Could a human stumble into a wormhole? Frank says it's happened before to none other than the U.S. military.
In 1943, the United States Navy wanted a technology to make battleships disappear from enemy radar. And they commissioned Albert Einstein and Nikola Tesla to work on the project. It was called the Philadelphia experiment. Now, all this is shrouded in secrecy. And some weird things happened, including the U.S. Eldridge disappeared spontaneously from Philadelphia Harbor and showed up in Norfolk, Virginia, hundreds of miles away. The only explanation I can think of, if that happened, would be a large wormhole. Now, experts on wormholes, such as Kip Thorne and David Deutsch, would tell you it takes too much energy to open up that big a wormhole. It's theoretically possible, but it's not likely because of the energy requirements to open up that big a wormhole. But on the other hand, they did have a megawatt generator on the USS Eldridge powering the electronic equipment that Tesla designed, and apparently they were able to do something, and the only explanation you can find in quantum physics is the wormhole.
Did the U.S. government create wormholes to hide battleships? Was the same technology used on the victims in Vermont?
If the people who went missing in the Bennington, Vermont area were sucked into a wormhole, I have no idea where they came out. It could be anywhere on this planet, it could be anywhere in another galaxy.
Were the Bennington Triangle victims snatched by Sasquatch? Were they killed by a mountain lion? Or were they pulled into an intergalactic wormhole? Weird, or what? A pilot is chased by a UFO before he vanishes without trace.
He says it's not an aircraft.
Last year, there were 900,000 missing persons recorded in North America. That's nearly 2,500 people who vanish every day. It's a scary thought, isn't it? I mean, the good news is most of these cases are easily explained. Kids running away from home, husbands running away from wives, or the IRS. But there's one case that doesn't fit into any category, and that's because it happened in mid-air.
October 21st, 1978. A Cessna 182 takes off from Melbourne's Moorabbin Airport. At the controls is Frederick Valentine, a 20-year-old flying instructor with the Australian Air Training Corps. His story has been documented by author Reg Watson.
He had a passion for flying, and because of this, he'd already knocked up 150 flying hours. He wanted to become a commercial pilot.
Frederick is bound for King Island, a short flight across the Bass Strait that separates mainland Australia from Tasmania.
Bass Strait is the most fascinating place. There has been a number of underground earthquakes there. So it is a very dangerous area, volatile area, and many boats, if you like, mysteriously go missing. Valentine had planned to leave Moorabbin Airport to go to King Island to meet some friends there. Visibility was good. It was excellent flying weather.
It's little more than an hour's flight time to King Island Airport. So far, it's been going smoothly.
It was only going about 120 miles per hour. Full tank. It had been well looked after. There was no problem with the craft itself. It should have got to King Island without any problem.
But 47 minutes into the journey, Frederick notices another, much larger aircraft flying at the same altitude.
Valentine was travelling about 4,500 feet in elevation. And the question that he asked Moorabbin, are there any aircraft below 5,000?
Delta Sierra Juliet. There seems to be a large aircraft below 5,000.
Manning the radio at Moorabbin Airport is air traffic controller Steve Roby. He checks the board. There's nothing else in the area. Suddenly, the other aircraft makes several high-speed passes above and below his much smaller Cessna.
It seems to me that he's playing some sort of game.
He's saying it's travelling under me. Within a short period of time, he's saying it's 1,000 feet above me. Then he says it's coming towards me. He asked the amazing question. He said, are there any Air Force craft in the area? Moorabbin said no.
The craft then veers close enough for Frederick to get a good look at it.
He said, well, it's long, shiny like metal.
It's got a green light and sort of metallic. It's all shiny on the outside.
Obviously, he's not familiar with it.
Suddenly, Frederick's engine begins to sputter and his controls malfunction.
The engine is rough idling.
But now the strange craft is performing even more frightening maneuvers around Frederick's plane.
It's travelling at incredible speeds. He said it's vanishing. It's orbiting me now.
Robbie asked the young pilot to repeat his description of the unidentified aircraft. Frederick's answer is chilling.
That strange aircraft is hovering on top of me again. He's hovering, and it's not an aircraft.
He says it's not an aircraft, and then it goes off.
It's Frederick's last transmission. Roby desperately tries to re-establish contact, but all he hears is a metallic clicking noise that ends with radio silence.
It was presumed that Frederick had smashed into the sea, and as a consequence, a search was arranged.
Frederick's Cessna is equipped with a radio beacon. It should be easy to locate. But as rescuers search, the mystery only deepens.
No wreckage, no body, and no oil spill was ever found.
Over 3 decades later, Reg Watson is convinced the Australian government still needs to get to the bottom of the case.
What I'd like to see happen with Frederick Valentik is that the authorities admit that something peculiar happened. I get angry with the authorities. I really would like that some type of salvage operation would go off the coast of Victoria to see whether indeed his aircraft is still there.
Now, if ever there was a genuine mystery, this is it, and here's why. It couldn't have been an accident. You see, your chances of being involved in an air crash are about 1 in 11 million. You got far more chance of being killed by a bee sting.
Ow. Or choking on food. Or climbing a ladder. Or falling out of bed. Get it?
What happened to Frederick Valentik? What did he see before he disappeared? Victor Vigiani is a paranormal investigator who studied the incident. He makes the case that Frederick was attacked by the only vehicle capable of the maneuvers he described, an alien spaceship.
One of the things that we know for sure is that this craft did circular things around his craft. So it would hover below, it would hover above, beside, and he was sort of looking all over the place and watching this thing come and go and dart. Normal aircraft can't do that.
Vigiano says Frederick wasn't the only person to see the UFO that was harassing him. It was also visible to witnesses on land.
There was a family of 3 or 4, 2 adults and 1 or 2 children who were driving along the road and actually saw the Valentik's craft moving along over the ocean and the UFO above it.
The UFO's technology was so powerful, it was able to cripple the Cessna's engine and instruments.
The electromagnetic influences that are part of the UFO phenomenon are manifested in the avionics. There were many instances where pilots have seen their instrumentations go just completely wild or be shut down completely. In Montana, back in 1967, a series of nuclear missiles, there was a missile installation, nuclear missile installation, and about 12 to 15 of these missiles were in silos at what they called Oscar flight. And below the surface of the ground, in the bunkers, the launch commanders reside. They watch everything going on. And what happened was Captain Robert Salas, who was the launch commander at the time at Echo Flight, got a call from one of his guards up on top and saying there's UFOs just flying all over the place, coming and going here. We don't know what the heck's going on. And so Captain Salas said, listen, just stay cool, don't get carried away. They had their weapons drawn, ready to do whatever, and he hung the phone fine. And a few minutes later, the same guard calls back, and he's completely frenetic. This man is just right off the wire. He's off the dial. He's excited. He's can barely speak, and he says there's this huge glowing red object right outside the gate. Huge, massive, and we don't know what the heck it is. And then Captain Salas, monitoring all of these things, listening to the men talk up above, then the guard says the thing is just taken off. It's just gone. And as soon as the UFO retreated or left the scene, 12 of his missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles, were shut down, put into a no-go situation. They were unlaunchable. They went down one at a time. This is something that Captain Robert Salas has to this day said has never happened before, at least to his witnessing.
Why wasn't there any wreckage? Simple. The plane didn't crash.
My personal opinion is that craft in some way was taken onto the UFO.
Vigiani is sure the authorities know it and have covered it up.
the general public has been conditioned to do is seek out those other explanations. Not just the human mind seeking rational arguments. The cover-up has also very psychologically conditioned us to go for the rational argument. Well, it's only this. Well, it's just a weather phenomenon. Well, it's just a flock of birds.
Was the Cessna taken on board by a UFO? Or did Frederick conceal his true intentions?
This is somebody that actually planned his disappearance.
A pilot disappears off the Australian coast after an encounter with an unknown craft. Was he abducted by a UFO? New York City-based private investigator Steve Rambo doesn't buy it.
As much as I'd like to believe in intelligent life somewhere in the universe, because it's lacking in most of the places where I work, I really don't subscribe to the UFO theory.
Rambam specializes in tracking down people who fake their own deaths.
If you look at this case, even superficially, you'll see that this is somebody that actually planned his disappearance.
Frederick had his whole life ahead of him. Why would he want to disappear?
20 years old, he's first experiencing the stresses of adulthood. He's entering the job market. He's starting to wonder what he's going to do with his life. He has a young girlfriend who is putting pressure on him about the future. After he disappeared, she showed a lot of signs of instability. She didn't work or essentially go out for about 7 years. I can tell you, when I was a 19-year-old guy, there were a couple of times when I wished I had a plane I could get into and go away from my college tests and my girlfriend at the time and whatever. I've got to tell you, there are people of that age with less pressure on them who don't have a plane available to them who manage to get up and fly away.
How does this explain the UFO attack? Random thinks Frederick made it up.
For the couple of weeks before he disappeared, he expressed unusual sudden interest in UFOs. It's a little difficult for me to believe that this fella all of a sudden gets sucked up into the mothership.
But if Frederick was a faker, why did he do it? To escape.
He has a plane at his disposal, which he has gassed up for 300 miles flight. Even though he's only got to go 40 miles, he probably needed some getting away money. And that plane was worth something. I think that plane was either sold or sold for parts. Everything was easier in 1978. Life was easier. Today, if you disappear, I know everywhere you've been up to the nanosecond before that disappearance. I know your credit card usage. I know your Wi-Fi activity. I know your cell phone within 100 feet. I know who you spoke to, who you emailed. I know your friends, your family, your likes, your dislikes, all in a database. I can tell you that now, I've been doing this for about 30 years. And I can tell you that in 1981 and 82, when I backgrounded somebody, my initial intake file, if I was really, really lucky, was about 20 pages. That was a huge file. Today, if I background you and I do initial intake on somebody who's disappeared, if I have less than 500 pages, it's a shame.
Rambam thinks we can solve the mystery. All we have to do is look in the right place.
If I had to bet, I think he's flying planes somewhere. Certainly not under his own name, but there's somebody that looks quite like him with his background. I've worked with police in Australia. They're no dummies. I think they've kept this open because they know darn well this kid was not sucked up into a UFO.
Did Frederick Valentin fake his own death? Or does the answer lie elsewhere? Mark Wallace has been a commercial airline pilot for almost 30 years.
I've actually narrowed it down to one theory as to what's happened. If you're a brand new pilot, this is one of the more common problems that leads to crashes. They get disoriented.
Wallace thinks Frederick's big mistake was the time he departed, 6:20 p.m.
When you're a fairly new pilot, that's called visual flight rules. You're looking at the sky for reference to keep yourself right side up. As you get late in the day, the water looks black at night. You now have a black ocean morphing into a black sky. You're losing that defining horizon for pilots to look at.
As it grows darker, Frederick grows more disoriented.
You can't really see the horizon anymore. It's very easy then for the airplane to start to go into a bank and you don't feel it. If you're an inexperienced pilot and you can't feel the plane banking and you look down at this instrument and it shows the airplane in a 30-degree bank, you don't believe it. So you don't change.
The more the plane banked, the more it lost altitude, until the Cessna simply fell into the sea. But why didn't searchers find any wreckage?
The Bass Strait is a massive strait of water between Australia and Tasmania, and it's got a lot of ocean currents as the ocean whips down from the Great Barrier Reef. Even though it's not very deep, it wouldn't take much for that, whatever debris there is, to end up who knows where.
But what about the mysterious craft that harassed him?
My first thought was that it's some sort of a military aircraft. You know, someone's fooling around, having a little bit of fun with the guy. I wouldn't put it past the military guys to go out and basically do an intercept, you know, a practice intercept on an aircraft.
Did Frederick Valentin crash his plane into the ocean? Or did he fake his own death? Was he shot down by an alien spacecraft? We may never know. Weird, or what? So there we have it. 3 stories of unsolved vanishings. 3 men disappear from aboard a yacht in Australia. Were they attacked by a giant squid? A series of people vanished from a remote Vermont forest. Did Bigfoot kidnap them? And a pilot was chased by a strange, unidentified craft. Was he shot down by aliens? You decide.
Join me next time for more stories that will undoubtedly be weird, or what?